How's it going, everybody? Wayne here. Today I'll be adding one game to the collection, and it's a good one. Let's check it out. So before we get to this game, I wanted to tell you about the trade that happened for my last N64 collection for stadium events. I told you before on the channel that I had traded the entire boxed N64 library for stadium events, but I didn't tell you how that trade unfolded. It all started when I had just completed my NES library. I had all 677 games, and stadium events was a reproduction. But I had the Real Little Samson, the Real Flintstone, Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. It was definitely a collection to be proud of. So I went ahead and posted that on a Facebook group, and I started getting a lot of likes and comments. Obviously, it's pretty substantial. And then there was this one guy that got on there and commented. He's like, well, what about stadium events? And I was like, well, I have a reproduction of stadium events. All the other ones are real. I'm fine with that because at the time I finished the library, there were 2 copies of stadium events that sold for $10,000 each that year. So I didn't see myself ever getting stadium events. So then this clown gets on there and he starts telling everybody it's a fake collection. Every nice comment somebody left, he was right there. Oh, don't worry, it's fake. It has a fake stadium events in it. And eventually I just got annoyed with the guy because no matter what anybody posted, he was there saying, oh, it's a fake set. And so I just ended up deleting the post. So a week goes by and my buddy who was trying to complete the NES Complete in Box library had hit me up to show me some of his recent pickups. And I sent him a message and I was like, hey, you want to trade your stadium events for my entire boxed N64 library? I sent the message as a joke originally, not expecting any kind of real response. And after a very long pause, he messages back and he said, are you serious? And my heart jumped. I was like, oh my gosh. You mean you'd actually consider this? So then I started considering this. Like, would this be something I would do? Would I trade all 296 N64 games in the original box for one NES game? And as time went on, I started liking the idea more and more about it. And I went to respond to him, and I remember I was so nervous and so excited that I was shaking really bad trying to send him a message like, this is happening. Like, I can't believe that I'm actually talking about doing this trade. It's huge. After that guy had commented on my post, I started thinking, I was like, well, what is the reason of having a real Little Samson if I'm going to have a fake stadium event? Or why should I have $800 Flintstone Surprise at Dinosaur Peak if stadium events is fake? If stadium events is fake, why don't I just go out and buy a reproduction Little Samson and a reproduction Flintstones and a reproduction everything so I can save myself a few $1,000s? And I was like, well, I don't want any games that aren't authentic. But then stadium events is authentic. Well, maybe I should just get rid of everything. Maybe I should just get an EverDrive or a Retro Pi instead of having this collection. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want my collection. I love the collection. So those aren't options. So after going back and forth for 3 days, we're talking on the 3rd day and my buddy's like, man, it seems like such a good deal to trade the entire Complete in Box N64 collection for this game. I think it's a really good deal. I think I want to do it. I was like, whoa. I was like, it's not Complete in Box. I said I was missing some manuals, including Sculptor's Cut being one of them. And he was so excited, although I had mentioned that a few times before, it wasn't until then he realized that it was actually missing the Sculptor's Cut manual, and I think I was missing a total of 33 manuals in that collection. So at that point my heart sank because I'm like, oh, he was thinking this thing was Complete in Box the whole time and now it's missing the Sculptor's Cut manual. He's not gonna want it. That's a $1,000 manual. So on day 4 I hit him up and I was like, hey, what do you want to do? Do you still want to do this trade, or are you not thinking about it anymore? I was like, I can throw in Hagani for Super Nintendo since I'm missing the manual for Sculptor's Cut. And he's like, yeah, let me think about it, I don't know. So it goes back and forth a couple more days, and finally, after a week of going back and forth, we finally came to an agreement. I had to throw a little bit of cash on top because I was missing the manual, but man, it was a crazy, stressful week. It was the biggest trade I'll probably ever do in my life. So he lives in Texas, I live in Japan, so we obviously had to ship the games to each other. I had 296 box games to ship, he had 1. So I started packing them up, and as I'm packing up all the N64 games, I'm seeing the titles that I got lucky with, that I got for a really good deal, that were going to be a nightmare to go back for if I ever decided I wanted to go for the library again. And I still wasn't regretting it. I was 100% satisfied. It was a week long of going back and forth. I was like, we're doing this trade, this is happening. But the titles I was packing away, they weren't going unnoticed. Games like Rat Attack, Chameleon Twist 2. Those games were... I'm gonna get you, mother... Oh, I got you, you son of a gun. I just killed a fly. Where were we? I was seeing titles like Chameleon Twist 2, Snowboard Kids 2. Games that I got for a really good deal. They were really nice condition. I was like, I'll never find some of these games in this condition again. But I was still doing the trade. I was 100% satisfied with my decision to trade the whole library for stadium events. When it comes to the N64, you gotta think like a very large portion of the games are sports games. So rather than forking out $10,000 at the time, I mean, they've sold for, you know, $8,000, $10,000, you know, it jumps everywhere. It depends whatever somebody wants to pay for it. But I knew that I could build the N64 collection back over time, and that's why I did. And then I spent the next 3 days it took me to pack the rest of the collection up, because I took every game out, every tray out, manual, and folded the boxes up nice and tight, put them between cardboard, make sure they got there safe. And it took 3 days for stadium events to get out here to me in Japan. And that was a very long 3 days of waiting. But once it got here, it was the greatest feeling I've ever had when it came to game collecting. So do you know what one of those games were that I was thinking about was going to be almost impossible to get back in good condition for a reasonable price? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me show you. Madden Football 64. Look at the condition of this, it's just amazing. Madden 64 is so hard to find. Alright, I've built it up enough. Are you ready for this? Clay Fighters, Sculptor's Cut, complete in box for the N64. Welcome home. So when I get any rare or expensive N64 game, there's a couple things I do immediately as soon as I pull it out of the box. The first thing is I check the seal on the back of the box and wave it around in the light and make sure it glares a little bit. If it's a dull seal, then it could potentially mean it's fake, not necessarily. Sometimes they're just faded or they don't glare. But there's other things you can check too. You want to check the ESRB rating and make sure it's got a nice crisp image, and you can verify it with other images online. The next thing I do if it's a box is open up the front flap and make sure it has codes on the tabs. So this box is legit. Next I take a look at the game and make sure the seal does the same thing on the game label. And you can tell a lot of times, maybe it has a choppy label. This label is legit. And then on the manual I also look for any kind of reproduction markings. I'll look for the right codes. I'll also check the ESRB rating on that. And on the inside of the cover of Sculptor's Cut, there's another Nintendo seal in there as well. Next up, I take the game cartridge, and you need a special security bit. It's definitely worth the investment if you plan on collecting rare games like this. So you can open up the cart and verify the board inside. Then there's 2 Phillips head screws inside once you get the back cover off. Then there's this little metal tray you gotta pop out here, and here you'll find your board. And you'll see a little code on the board here that matches the code on the label. And you also want to make sure there's no wires protruding from it. Make sure it's a legit board. So there we have 100% legit Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut. Now we just need to pop it in and see if it works. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut was released in May of 1998 as a Blockbuster rental exclusive, as most probably already know. The Clay Fighter series is a parody of other fighting games. The name of the game is a parody itself, calling it Clay Fighter 63 1/3 rather than Clay Fighter 64. Even some of the combos had names like Dumb Combo and Itty Bitty Combo. The story of Sculptor's Cut is the same as that of Clay Fighter 63 1/3. However, Sculptor's Cut had additional characters. In contrast, many of the special attacks were actually taken out of the game. I played all the way through the game, and it's not a great game. The graphics are awful, the controls are subpar, but it's definitely a cool piece to add to the collection. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut cost me... I really don't want to say what it cost me. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut cost me $1,700. Now, I was watching this game on eBay for a while. It was over $2,000, and as it gets closer to Christmas time, less people are buying retro video games and buying Christmas presents for their kids and stuff. And people want that money for their kids, and I saw the price drop down to $1,900. I wanted to buy it at $1,900, but I wasn't ready to do that. I have kids I gotta buy presents for. I mean, if you go on eBay now, you'll see there's, I think, a box on there for $1,200. Just the box, no manual, no game, and the box isn't any better than this one. And there's also complete in box copies going for $2,500. $3,000. I think I seen one last month for $3,500. Ridiculous prices. Game number 19 costing $1,700. That brings us up to a total of $2,508. As always, thank you for subscribing to my channel. I'm going to be completing the entire Complete in Box library right here on this show. And make sure to leave a thumbs up for Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut. And until next time, I'm Wayne, and thanks for watching.